So I'd like to call the Board and Education and Business Committee meeting together for Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. I'd like to begin by recognizing we are meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people where we live, learn, and play. First item is the adoption of the agenda. Is someone willing to move the agenda? Trustee DeGroot, Trustee Thorne, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Minutes of the 26th, 2021 Board of Education and Business Committee meeting. Trustee Kimler, I think you chaired that meeting. Do you want to move that? Adoption of the minutes, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Action list. Over to you, Mr. Singquist.
Just sharing the action list for the committee. The policy 8 climate change committee is on this agenda, and we still need to do work around with QP and USW on time bank prior to preparation of next year's budget.
Thank you. No petitions and delegations. Education, is Principal Lisa Leclerc here? I don't see her on the list.
She's here.
Huh. Hi, Lisa.
Hello. I have Grant here with me. Would you like us to start right away?
Anytime you're ready.
Okay, would I be able
Welcome,
to
Grant.
There he is. Would I be able to have sharing permission, please?
Claire is shaking her head, yes.
Great.
Or nodding her head, yes, I should say.
Awesome. So I will just put this on full screen. So thank you for inviting Grant and I, or allowing us to participate in this meeting to share our framework for enhancing student learning. Grant and I are, right down here, sorry. We're going to just move through this using the same headings that were offered to us as a framework for putting the plan together by our senior management team, which we really enjoyed. Our story will just look at the demographic of our school and some general information about our school. Our learners is going to just give you some of the information on data about some of the learners and their strengths and stretches in the school. And then from there, we'll go over the goals that we've established as a school team and what other steps we're taking moving forward beyond the goals. So it's called Cobble Hill. I know several of you have been out to our school as a single track early French immersion school. We've got 378 students registered this year, K-7 program. We have 30 students in our school who are self-identified as Indigenous, and 85% of those students are self-identified as Métis. We happen to have Korean Chow here this week for our Métis session, so that's been really exciting for the kids. We also have 12 ELL learners in our school, and upon reviewing our BEBC data, we have approximately 12 languages other than English and French being spoken in homes of students in our school. And we're in the process of creating a wall to say hello in all of those languages, including Hulkaminam and French and English, so that everyone feels included in the school and their language celebrated. We also have 13 students who have ministry designations, and 3 of those students have low incidence designations. We celebrate French culture at our school in a variety of ways. Obviously, we speak French all the time in the school, except for the 20% English instruction through English language arts. And so we do a big celebration in February, March timeframe of the year to celebrate Carnaval. But throughout the year, we also try to provide opportunities for our students to be able to see French spoken outside the walls of the building through giving them access through video format or speakers in the school, so that they know that this isn't the only place where they're going to hear French in their lifetime. As young learners, they aren't always aware of travel, but someday hopefully they'll use their French in context. And we also do lots of the things that all the other schools do across the district. We have great sports teams and lots of teachers who engage in coaching. We spend lots and lots of time outside. We try to engage in a lot of hands-on learning and multi-age groups when we can, with big buddy classes and other clubs that happen throughout the school. And we also try to have a lot of fun and create school spirit with different spirit days in the school. That one down there in the right-hand corner is just a crazy hair day. And we also really have a highly engaged parent community. And you can see in the photo down in the bottom center, parent on a field trip doing a literacy center outside, reading a French book with our students. So that's really important to us as a school community. As far as our school goal is concerned, you can see on the right, we've numbered off sort of some steps in our eco-cycle planning process. We were coming off of the heels of a 3-year plan goal around empathy. And in the spring of 2021, we used our data from our student learning surveys to see how far we'd come with that school goal. We'd been assessing it throughout the years as well. And based on our student learning survey data, we'd really seen the impacts of our empathy goal on creating a sense of belonging and caring schools, a feeling of our school being a caring school for our learners over those 3 years. And so we spent our May PLC celebrating that work through a PowerPoint presentation and video celebration with our staff, which we then also shared with our parent community. But as we were sort of working on wrapping that goal up, we were starting to see some emergent needs around oral language and literacy in the school. And so when our spring data came in through DART, district-wide right, and early success, we analyzed that and really did determine that it was time to focus on a new goal. And so we developed our new goal just sort of leading into the start of the summer through anecdotal comments that we had been hearing with our staff, and also through that data, and then solidified it with our staff at our first PLC and started developing our strategies to target the goals. So we'll sort of walk you through the data here and show you what we landed on. So we started off by reviewing the strategic plan and ensuring that what we were doing was going to be aligned as well to where we wanted to head as a district. And so we really felt that our focus was going to land heavily on the learning pillar of our strategic plan, but the other components of the strategic plan, the other 3 pillars, are just so important to also be included in that plan. And so as we move forward, we're going to be looking at ways to embed the other component, the other pillars in with the learning goals that we're going to talk to you about now. The data was telling us, and this is a really, really brief summary of the data with this 10 minutes. We really unpacked it, Grant and I, quite significantly, but if we look at the percentage of students who are emerging or at risk in phonological awareness by grade level, this is our data from the spring of 2021. So all of these students are 1 year ahead now. So for example, our grade 2 students on this chart are now grade 3 students. And those students who are currently in grade 3 were the students who at the end of grade 1 started learning from home for those last 3 months of the year. And so we have seen, I won't call it significant, but certainly a rise in at-risk learners in phonological awareness. And so that's something that the grade K-3 teachers really feel that they want to have as a strong focus for their students for the next few years. And so the way that they would like to target that is by going deeper into using manuel phonique is jolly phonics, and we've always used that in our K and K1 classes. And Raconte-moi les sons was another French program that targets specifically those really those sounds that are specific to French and the letter combinations that make nya and f that are different in French than in English. And so really targeting that specifically, and for longer periods of time, like really slowing it down and not just using the book as the guide that we move to the next unit, but actually slowing down and ensuring that students are attaining the level of phonological awareness that we feel will really provide them with that strong foundation to have success later on with reading. And they also obviously want to make it fun and meaningful and engaging. And so they've been using this book story workshop where the kids build stories and words and vocabulary using loose parts to create a narrative and speak and use their oral French to kind of tell stories and then apply that to their writing later. So you can see the statement that we use. We also want to make sure that our families are aware of what we're doing in the school. And we have a weekly bulletin at École Cobble Hill every week. And we try to keep our parents updated on what we're doing in the school and just to sort of ensure that they know that those PLC days are being used in a really positive way for the betterment of the learning for their children. And Grant's going to now talk to you about the goal for the intermediate grades.
Greetings, trustees and those present. At École Cobble Hill, as you know, we are a single track French immersion school. So using the district-wide right as the primary source of our data, you have to be made aware that we in the French immersion schools, we do the district-wide right in French, not in English. And we find this to be a really great tool for evaluating the writing skills. And we found as an intermediate group of teachers that the students really needed a lot more support with their writing conventions and their oral language in French. So moving forward, using the book on the right, L'Approche Intégrée by Roy Lister, and also a list of high frequency words in French, les mots de haute fréquence. We've realized that there are a number of very basic French words we would like all of our children to know by the time they leave our building in grade 7 as they go to high school. So using that as a baseline plus the district-wide right, we will be doing a lot of oral language development and writing proficiency exercises to make sure we can improve that and use the district-wide right in the spring, and also some diagnostic tests in the spring as well to make sure we're making a difference in their achievement.
And so in order to make sure that we're not just using that, the district-wide right and DART and the early success screen for our only data points, we also have been working with our staff and on Shane Saphir's street data book. And we agreed as a staff that we would all select 1 to 2 students in our classes to interview. And you can see the list of questions, and those are all the types of questions that are suggested in Shane Saphir's book, just to sort of see, to get the information directly from the children around their experiences and learning in the classroom to help also facilitate our growth and understanding and what their needs are and how we can best serve them. And that's it. Hajka, merci, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Lisa, I have 2 questions. Can you just back up into the bar graph?
Mm-hmm.
K1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
And is this a snapshot of 1 year?
Yeah, that's the snapshot of students and of last year in the spring. Our K students, how many students were at risk, our grade 1 students, the percentage that were at risk, our grade 2 and 3, and so on. So
isn't this boding well for the future with the Ks and 1s being considerably lower than 2s and 3s?
Yeah, and that's, yeah, we were talking about that, which is really interesting that you raised that point, because there's long been research that points to how a strong foundation in your first language leads to greater potential success in French immersion. And a lot of these children in KM1 spent quite a bit more time at home, potentially. And I can't say for sure whether they were interacting regularly and as much with their parents, because I know a lot of parents were also working. But it's possible that by being exposed to their first language for about a year more, let's say, that it could have had an impact on their foundations in their first language, which is another reason why we have been also considering using interventions in English in some of our KM1 classrooms instead of interventions in French, to support some of those learners who may be coming into the program with not as strong of a foundation in their first language in the future. And then we can support them by boosting those core foundations in English for them as they move forward and learn their second language in French.
So are you actually saying there's one benefit of COVID that these
Maybe.
kids, maybe, okay. I
It's a
have one more question.
far-fetched belief, but we gotta hope we have some hope.
I just have one more question. Your sports team that you're showing, we're wearing black and green. Is that
Yes.
the colors of Cobble Hill?
Green's our color, and a parent of ours designed those shirts. You can't really see one of them, but he was quite an eccentric fellow. And a lot of our shirts have 9 3/4 and infinity as the number, and pi is one of the numbers.
Oh,
Anyways, yeah. Oh, there's a Tintin on one of the children on the far right too, on the chest plate.
no, that was I used to play for the couch, and that color, the black and white, the green and the black were, of course, the colors of the couch. Any other questions from trustees? Claire, could you not share the screen anymore?
Oh, I'll take that off.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Any other questions from trustees? Welcome, Trustee Croft and Trustee Doman. No other questions? Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Grant.
Hey, thank
Really
you.
appreciate all the work you do. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks for having us. Bye.
Okay, we're moving on to 6.2, mental health and COVID transition plan. Tom Longridge. He could be brought into the panel. Welcome,
Hey.
Tom.
Thanks, Quill. CEM, Quanasilamnala. It's lovely to see you all this evening. I will share my screen and hopefully it works after I do this. And give me a sec. There you go. Can everybody see the screen? Perfect. Thank you. Oops. Oh, here we go. So looking at the culture of care aspect of our strategic plan, and under the mental health as part of that, and mental well-being and wellness, I just wanted to review what some of our core elements of that culture of care are, and that's to acquire a deep understanding of our learners by developing healthy relationships, and to create healthy work and school environments that promote wellness and enhance mental health opportunities and partnerships that support well-being, and continue to create, promote safe and inclusive learning environments for our diverse learners. Mental health in schools. It's important to go back to our foundational documents in this, and one being the Pathway to Hope, which was the roadmap for making mental health and addictions care better for people in British Columbia. And that was through the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions a few years ago. There's also connected to that was the mental health and schools strategy by the Ministry of Education. And an element to that, subsumed under that, were the key principles and strategies for K-12 mental health promotion in schools. And we can never forget the importance of the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action to make sure that that voice is always heard in all we do. And Cowichan Valley School District Strategic Plan, which I just mentioned, the pillar of culture of care, which is a strong element across everything, but one strong element of our strategic plan. Mental well-being or positive mental health involves a capacity to think, feel, and act in ways that improve our ability to enjoy life and deal with its challenges. Schools play an important role in supporting students to build the skills and knowledge that contribute to their overall well-being. That's a quote from the Ministry of Education Mental Health and Schools Strategy document that I thought I'd reference here. Another important connected document through the ERASE and the Safer Schools Foundation is Teresa Campbell's quote, is that safe and connected school cultures are essential when ensuring safe and caring school environments. Culture of connection and climates of safety must be created, promoted, and practiced. They do not evolve on their own. They must involve all members of the community if it is to be successful, sustainable, and effective. Connectedness involves levels of communication and caring to create feelings of being valued, respected, and wanted. A big part of what the particular grant is allowed us to facilitate is, and we were looking at doing this, but the grant certainly will help facilitate this greatly, and that's that all secondary schools will build and implement a school mental health plan, and that all elementary schools will build and implement a social emotional learning plan, which is again, mental well-being and resilience in both instances. And really, if I encapsulated it, it's more a plan of belonging and safety within our schools.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
What can you remind me what grant you're referring to, and is it ongoing?
There's one that's ongoing, which is a mental health grant, and it's gone up to $52,000 a year. It started off about $28,500, and then went up to about $32,000, and then and now it's gone to $52,000 per year. And then there's the one just for this year is one-time funding of about $71,000. It's actually, I think, $7,885, I think, if Jason can correct me on that. So approximately $71,000 for this year because of COVID and the extra strain on mental health across the province and all districts. And it's not, it sounds like a lot of money, but it can go pretty fast. And we're trying to activate this year's funding in order to facilitate long-term planning that allows us to be sustained from the leverage this gives us to move into year-over-year planning and to coordinate a lot of the programs that we've brought into existence and that we've supported through the other part of the mental health grant.
Thank you.
So and that's what we've determined is that there's a lot of programs, but sometimes people don't understand they all fit together or how they fit together. And we've been intentional about bringing on different programs that actually fit together and support schools. But you need, if you don't plan, you plan to fail, is that old adage, I think, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So this is our needed to coordinate a lot of what we do, and it has to be contextual and fit within the individual school sites. So it's designed to help secondary schools. This is the secondary school plan to start with. Create a living document to develop, plan, and follow through with support initiatives year after year and be sustainable. Be easy to use, realistic, plug and play, document which encourages the team approach to planning involving all stakeholders of school community, including students, staff, and parents. It's strength-based, built from the gifts and assets of both personnel and material that are within the secondary school community, and be informed and honor Indigenous ways of knowing and being. Now, although we're starting with the secondary mental health plan, this is the same structure in the social emotional learning plan for elementary. It will have those components, and it's informed by information that we gain through surveys and through interviews of particular groups in regarding getting specific information that informs a plan for that school context. And we've created a model that all schools can do that with. So again, you've got student voice. We must keep students at the center of what we do. The school community must listen to the very people it's constructed to serve. And that's a quote from Shane Saphir. Parental input. The school community must listen to the parents and guardians who love and nurture the students most of all. And we have to respect that. And staff input. The school community must listen to the adults who serve our educators, leaders, and mentors to the students. And I think that's fundamental. You have to have all three involved, and you have to have the voices of all three. Now, this is a little bit complex. It's a little overwhelming to see the detail. I did give everybody, there's copies within your packages to look at it more closely. This is both the SEL plan and the secondary mental health plan, but I'll show you it in individual aspects. This is the secondary plan, and you look at it, there's different aspects to it. Without getting into all the details, this captures a lot of all the programs that we're doing across the secondary schools related to building the plan. It's not all the programs, but for the particular funding to enable the plan to be created, a lot of it is release time given to school teams in order to build the plan. We did pilot it last year, but we're making sure that the programs that are in schools are built within the plan, and that they actually are given release time in order to come and plan and in school teams, so that you have key supporters, facilitators across that would include educational assistants, principal or vice principal. We have SOUTNs that are student support that are Indigenous, as well as teachers, of course, that are part of that school planning group. Again, we give time and planning in order to be able to get the information needed, and that helps develop the plan and inform the plan through, as I said, through being able to do surveys, as well as individual or interviews with individual kids and parents, in order to make sure we capture those kids that you may not get to complete a survey. This is a timeline that was connected to the plan. Sorry, I went back. So that's a survey connected to the plan. Just gives you, a timeline. It gives you an idea of what we're going to be doing and how we're rolling it out. And we're in the midst of all the schools, secondary schools, are collecting data and collecting information that will inform the plan as they put it together based on that information. And then, of course, they will be implementing the plan and activating it this year and moving into next year. This is the other part of the social emotional learning plan in elementary. The one thing I will address, it looks like some of the programs like EASE and CALM, they shift. Not only we started off just in kindergarten grade 1 with CALM, and now that's moving into grade 2 and 3. EASE, that's a program around reducing anxiety in kids. We're moving into secondary school. So it's not just the same program over and over again. We're actually expanding each year and building capacity with our staff each year. And this gives you some idea. And again, always informed by that Indigenous voice. On the far right column, you'll see that we are getting advice and working with the Indigenous Education Department, as well as Deloria Kinghorn, who's an Indigenous counselor within our community, and then also informed by some of our agencies and counselors from Cowichan tribes, as well as Kwame Lalem, which is the support and mental health supports for the agency with the other nations within the region. And this gives you an idea of all the programs that are happening and what's happening in regard to our elementary schools. And our secondary schools is what you saw before. Again, our timelines for implementation, pardon me, for that part of the plan. You can see that we're rolling out the teams. We have a core group of principals and vice principals that are building the framework for the plan. And then, of course, that will be rolled out to school teams, and then we'll build those school teams and support them. And then we'll support the schools as they build out the plans within the programs that they have within their schools, because it has to fit the context of the schools, as well as some basic elements that we need, and so basic data collection to know what's working and what's not working as we pilot and then expand into across the district into different schools. And this is where the money is. You can see that a lot of the elements are training elements. It's important that as many staff as possible are involved and that they have an understanding of what trauma-informed practice is, about what some of the programs are in regard to as we're rolling them out, and also to resource and support those planning teams that are doing the work. And then, of course, there's some resource requirements. Some of it is online and some of it is train the trainer models. We're using both, particularly given COVID. It's been difficult to release large numbers of teachers. So we're doing it through PLCs, through dinner series, through online, and through getting people trained, and then those trainers going out and training others within schools in small groups so that we can do release time differently. And of course, you have to sustain things within schools. So we're looking at building some grants into schools in order for them to sustain the planning and support the teacher education and support staff education within those schools. Built in also within that are some peer-to-peer programs that we're piloting and bringing in to support schools through kids, peers supporting younger groups or the kids within their school communities. So that's how the 71,000 is, and that's that initial one-time grant that we have the benefit of this year. And then the ongoing programs that we have and are sustained through the other 52,000 are in this spreadsheet as well. So you see that Reclaiming Our Students, which is a program that Tamara Stryjak and Hannah Beach, who are actually, Tamara Stryjak is actually Gordon Neufeld's daughter, and she is the dean of the Neufeld Institute, the academic dean of those programs. And we're working on working with her book in regard to reclaiming youth, and that's for youth and from 12 to 19. And we're working throughout the district in a program for that age group. If we're looking at understanding behavior, that's huge to understand how trauma informs behavior, and how we have to have compassionate approaches to understanding behavior rather than just look at the results, and then look at the kid being the reason for it, not all the other elements that trigger a trauma response in kids trying to protect their environment or feel safe. Nonviolent crisis intervention is part of that. As we look to ways to be trauma informed about how we approach kids that are dysregulated and how we deal with those heavily dysregulated kids in our schools, and deal with it compassionately, but still deal with it. Again, and that connects to our crisis response that includes everything from when trauma happens to a school community, when tragedy happens within our overall community, and when violent incidents occur or threats occur, that we do our VITRA processes and that we make sure that those are maintained and people are aware and continually trained and evolved. And you see our crisis response piece to that as well. And of course, we have looked at our screening process, particularly in regard to behavior and H designations in regard to severe mental health and behavior, to understand that we never lose sight of the learning in that, and we make sure that how we approach those designations and how those kids are supported is fundamentally important. And I would also comment that SOGI is within that, because we understand, if you look at the data, we know that even having GSAs within schools reduce the level of self-injury and even suicide within those schools that have GSAs. And that's for all kids, not just kids that identify in the LGBTQ2+ community. So that is an aspect of training that we need to support in regard to understanding and not having kids feeling isolated, but feel included and welcome in that community. And that gives you an idea of how the 52,000, again, it's mostly for training requirements. It's important to support the staff that are doing the work. Resource requirements, which again can be what we need to pay for in order to keep all the materials that support these programs going, and initiatives in individual schools to make sure that we're supporting those individual schools. The one thing I'll say in summary is that each program that we've gone through is research-based, connected to university research and evidence-based, including people like O'Neill and Martin Bruhan from the ministry. They're all ministry supported as well. So we tap into resources such as Safer Schools, as well as the university resources like Go To Mental Health, Stan Kuchar's work, and the Compassionate Learning Communities Framework, which is Linda O'Neill's work, as well as the crisis management of Kevin Cameron and his work. So everything is actually supported by the ministry and researched, and we know has evidence to see that they're successful.
Thank you, Tom. Trustees, any questions? I have a question, Tom. There's a very complex array of strategies or programs. Are all schools undertaking them simultaneously, or are there some being emphasized at some schools while others are championing other strategies or programs?
A little bit of both. I think we have COM, and I think in all our elementary schools in regard to, there's at least one person, kindergarten grade 1 teacher, and then that's expanding out. We have Go To Mental Health across our secondary schools. And I'd say a combination of COVID has sort of dampened that. And part of the idea of having a overall plan is to actually bolster some of those cross-district programs that need to be put within the array of what a school's doing to make sure that it's being supported and that we get the information back in regard to the data back in order to know that they're working across the district. And we have some programs like a peer support program in Chemainus through the Erase, so Chemainus Secondary School, through our the Linda O'Neill work, which is done through a community of practice that's being spread out, that now has 3 groups, one including Francis Kelsey, and one across other sites in regard to that work. So it's a combination, and then we can get the data and see 2 things. One is what would work across the district. Also, we want to make sure that each school site can build a plan and has different programs that work and they're committed to within that. And so we need to support those, but we also need to make sure that that investment is actually having a positive effect. So it's a combination of things. Things like Humble Hooves, for instance, doesn't cost us any money because it's currently being supported by a donor, and it can fit in with the array of other programs that they have within an elementary school, for instance, and including Quam. So it's a matter of the whole idea of the plan, and that's the beauty of having it supported through that funding, is that it's not a bunch of individual fly-by-night things that won't be sustained. There's an intentionality and a planning structure to it that makes sure that it's being informed by data and informed by a plan, rather than just seeing, do we like this program or not? And then it sort of, once we have that champion leave, the plan goes away with it, or the program goes away with it. This is something that we hope we can sustain a structure and a plan, and things can come in and out of that plan as needed and as benefiting the kids.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions of Tom? So Tom, if you could stop sharing, and Claire, there's a motion that the board needs to consider, the committee needs to consider. I believe it's on the front page of your agenda.
I'll be sharing that. Just one moment. I'm just catching up. My apologies.
Trustee Spilsbury, you had your hand up.
So I was just preparing to read the motion to say that the Board of Education and Business Committee recommends to the board the implementation of the mental health COVID transition plan as presented.
Are you moving that, Madam
Yes.
Chair? And is it seconded by Trustee Croft? Any discussion on that? Recommendation to the board. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Hey, Tom, do you have a second presentation for us then?
I believe I do, but I believe if you put Mike Russell in, I think he's going to be co-presenting it with me.
Okay.
And I think he actually has the presentation online.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Mike.
Nope. And Tom, would you like me to put that up right now?
That'd be great. Thanks, Mike. So based on the work that came out of the board, and the understanding is that we need to examine our communication practices, and that's fundamental to serving our students with diverse needs and with disability and neurodiversity. Just want to go through that. If we go to the next slide, as we set this up and set up the context. The Cowichan Valley School District helps students with disabilities and diverse abilities find success in school so they're prepared for a future of their choosing. And that references definitely our strategic plan. Students with disabilities and diverse abilities and the families that support them find success at Cowichan Valley Schools. However, the way in which the district has communicated about the services for diverse learners can be confusing and lead to frustration and unnecessary stress for those families. And that's what we've discovered, and that's what we're heeding and reacting to. This communication plan sets out to correct the communication and endeavors to provide a streamlined and comprehensive flow of information to and from our families. So just going through the overall sort of overview of the structure, and then Mike will go into some details. The communication plan is built on 3 consecutive parts that all involve our key audience. And so that's important of how we get the feedback. Phase 1 is to reflect, checking in with the partners and stakeholders, asking them how they access information and how we can better connect. Parents, students, DPAC, PAC are all part of that, including PI, which is the Parents for Inclusive Education. All we need voices heard, and will inform what we do in regard to building out the plan. Phase 2 is the rework. The information provided from our partners will help guide the revised information flow. So there'll be a welcome video. We'll rebuild a website, and we'll look at the infographics and make sure that they're simple. I think we know there's still stuff on the website that's totally out of date and needs to be pulled and replaced with something that's easily accessible and current. And phase 3 is to reconnect. We're closing the loop and reconnecting with our parents to ensure we did it right, so that what we do create is actually able to be accessed and understood. Because sometimes the message sent is not always well understood. And again, checking in with parents, students, DPAC, PAC, PI, as I said, the Parents for Inclusive Education, and MCFD, which is one of our an allies in regard to supporting students with diverse abilities and disabilities, in regard to both mental health and in categorized disabilities and neurodiversity. Mike, did you want to talk about the audiences?
Sure. So our key audiences that we've defined for this communications plan, there's 4 of them. The first one's prospective families who have a student with disabilities and diverse abilities that are looking to come to our district, and really trying to zero in on what those families need and how we can provide that information to the best of our ability to alleviate their stress and confusion. The next one is going to be families who currently have students with disabilities and diverse abilities that are already enrolled in our school district, may already access some supports, may access a myriad of supports, but we want to make sure that they're able to navigate that system that we have. The next one is the media. As a crucial partner in helping us to communicate with our communities, the media is going to be one of our key audiences and help us put out the information on how families can access these supports and the information and the workflow that we have. And then finally, our partner agencies. I know Associate Superintendent Longridge mentioned MCFD. That is one of many partner agencies that we'll be connecting with as this plan rolls along. So the actual plan itself is has a couple steps to it, but all are really going to be fed by that first part of engagement. And that's going to take the place of a survey. So Inclusive Education is going to prepare a survey for families and students with disabilities and diverse abilities to find out how they currently access the information about supports, what information they would like to access, how they even access information for our district overall, or any other types of information. Now that survey is going to be designed in a fully accessible manner to make sure that anybody who wants to take that and can provide their information for us. The next part's going to be a video, and these are going to be done concurrently. So that survey and the video are going to be done concurrently. And the video itself is going to really focus on the culture of care and how our culture of care informs what we do at a district level. So it's not going to be so much about processes. I don't know if anybody really wants to watch a video about processes and navigating bureaucracy. So this video is really going to be about creating that culture of care and how we do that through our schools, through the supports, working with families, and how we move that forward to better benefit students throughout the district. We're going to come back then with our information flow, and that's what's really going to be guided through the results from the survey. The information flow that we're going to design is going to be definitely driven by those results. Finding out exactly how parents and caregivers, families access that information is really going to allow us to build something better than we have, and really allow for sort of a seamless transfer of information, and how we can really have families access that information the way they want to and the way they need to. Then we're going to report back to our families. So really it's going to go back to our families, like Associate Superintendent Longridge said, and say, hey, did we get this right? Here's what we've come up with. Here's how we've laid this out. Did we get it right? Do we have the pieces in there that you tried to impart on us, the information you tried to give us through those surveys and the answers to that? Did we get it done in a way that really serves you and your families? And then finally, after that is going to be community and parent outreach, talking about this plan, talking about what has come as a result of the plan, and the information that we've been able to put back together and deliver back to the community. So
Thanks,
hand
Mike.
this back to Associate Superintendent Longridge there.
Yep, thanks. The one thing I want to make sure, we also make sure we have that voice that we need, and that's the Indigenous parent voice too. And so definitely we'll be consulting with the Indigenous parent group that's part of DPAC. And not just MCFD, but those other organizations that are connected and serve the nation's population as well, to make sure that we get fully informed in regard to how we can access and improve our information flow. In regard to the key messages, this is what's important to us to be understood. Our staff helps families find success for their children by guiding them to the best supports. We do this by alleviating the confusion and overwhelms so families can focus on what's most important to them. We provide easy to access to information to obtain support for parents, caregivers, and community members. To alleviate confusion, we help with clear, specific information without jargon or acronyms. We provide information at the right time when you need it. And that's the message we want to have, and that's what we want to have parents and caregivers be able to do. As I've talked to PACs and parents, parent groups, some people are definitely overwhelmed when they find out that their child has been given a designation or has been given a diagnosis. And we want to make sure that that is supported, welcomed, and understood and heard. And so that's the objective that we're looking to achieve through an effective and responsive education plan and communication plan. So in conclusion, students with disabilities and diverse abilities were well served by the Cowichan Valley School District. This plan aims to update the information and information flow about the services for students with disabilities and diverse abilities offered by the Cowichan Valley School District. Success in this plan will mean reduced stress and confusion for families who are faced with sorting through and understanding those services. Thank
you, Mike. Thank you, Tom. What is the timeline for implementation of this plan and completion?
We're going to be starting the survey and video probably early in the new year, so that January, February mark, and then working throughout that next sort of spring season to get this rolled out.
Thank you. Any other questions by trustees? Trustee Croft?
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic. I really appreciate the built-in consultation and iterative processes so that people have opportunities to reflect and take a look and take another look and really get it right. I have a question regarding First Nations, and so we, of course, have that built in, but as I understand it, we have folks who live on reserve and First Nations who live off reserve. So have we identified, do we need to reach out to those families in different ways? Are we prepared to do that or to look into it? And how will that be carried out?
Partially through, we will talk to the parent group, the Indigenous parent group connected to DPAC. We'll also look for ways through our INED group to connecting with those families. There's ready structures through our, I think our LEA process that informs and gives us mechanisms in which we can communicate and get some information back. We also use organizations like Kwame Lalem and Lulamatal Smanem that give us feedback. So there's connections we have through those organizations that would allow us to get some information. And from school-based, anytime that we can get that even one-to-one conversations will inform what we're doing and how people access information, because it may not be different from one community to another. And we want to make sure that access is where people will get it, not where we think we want to put it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate respecting diversity within the community. So lovely. Thank you so much.
Any other questions of trustees? Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tom. Trustees, you have a second recommendation for consideration. The Board of Education and Business Committee recommends the board adopt the Inclusive Education Communication Plan, Diverse Learners as presented. There a mover for that motion? Trustee Croft, Trustee Kemmler. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, moving on to Jason, Business and Operations.
Thank you. I have a number of items on the agenda this evening, and I'm going to need to share the screen and catch up with where I am on my agenda. So just one moment. Okay. So the first item I have on the agenda is an estimate of how the enrollment increase is expected to impact the grant for the board, and that should be announced sometime next month in December. So this is just the revenue side. We have a lot of work still to do on the expenditure side, but looking at the increase in student enrollment, the board can expect to see an increase in enrollment-based funding of just over just over 3.1 million. And netted against that will be the enrollment decline supplement that was previously received. So together, that is expected to be about 2.7 million for enrollment increase in the per pupil. You'll also see variances through the special needs counts. So this is November, so this is using the September enrollment numbers, and this is what we had in March when we did our budget period. So that's what we're comparing, and we'll see a drop in level 1. We had anticipated having 12 students, and in fact we had 9, for example, but level 2 go up by 17 and level 3 go down by 8. So that all nets out to about 141,000 of additional funding for inclusive education. You also see a significant increase in Indigenous education. So we have 103 more students than what was initially anticipated, which will generate 161,000. And in total, that brings us to approximately 3.2 million in additional funding expected. out of the grant. And so the next update that we'll give the board will be with the expenditures completed to see how those all compare. But my initial analysis of looking at how many teachers have been added, how many staff have been added to service those 400 plus students, I think the board is still out ahead, and we'll have those figures for you soon. So if there's any questions, happy to go over them.
It's nice to receive good news, Mr. Sandquist. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next item is just here for information. There, every year there's a select standing committee on finance and government services. And what we received was a copy of the report back from the consultation that school boards were invited to participate in. And I'm going to just bring it up here again on the screen and share it just to go through the recommendations for the 2022 budget from the committee. So I think they're of interest to the K-12. So we were able to edit the document down to just the K-12, which is what you see in your package. I don't want to go over and read it all. I'm going to go straight to the recommendations because I think that's the real bulk of the report. The rest is here for trustees to read at your leisure. But recommendation 107, to re-examine capital funding with a view to being more forward-looking and responsive in addressing inequities and gaps with respect to provincial funding for IT and maintenance, and reviewing policies regarding district contributions and portable construction. So I think district contributions towards new schools, district contributions toward new school sites. There's some discussion around standardizing that to a set percentage, which currently is up to 50%. But I think they're looking at lowering that threshold to make it more feasible for districts to contribute to large projects. If you live outside of the Lower Mainland where you don't have very expensive properties to sell, it can become difficult for a board to contribute to a new school build. They want to look at prioritizing methods to fast track construction on new schools. We certainly are aware that the province is expecting 5,000 students per year for the next 5 years, plus approximately 2,000 possible refugees from Afghanistan. So 7,000 students to house each year for the next 5 years is a pretty significant enrollment increase, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on school facilities. And then operation funding, again, a lot of language around transparency and being proactive and ensuring appropriate consideration for anticipated population changes and equitable distribution of resources to deliver new curriculum and reconciliation initiatives, increase health and safety measures and student transportation. So those seem to be some areas that we're going to likely see attention in the upcoming funding formula. Reviewing funding to distributed learning and independent schools. So we'll see what that means. We certainly have our own distributed learning program, which has quite a number of students in it. So that will be of interest to the board. Recruitment and retention. This is a significant issue. And if you read through the report, they're looking at a shortage, I think, of about 20,000 teachers in the future. So that's going to be certainly a big one. And students with special needs, providing supports and training to staff to support inclusion and improving early identification and assessment, and then on to vulnerable students, meal programs, mental health supports, again, coming around wraparounds, services, and personnel. So I think these are highlights, and we'll see how they get implemented into the 2022 provincial budget for K-12 and into our next funding formula. But I thought they were of interest to this group, and brought them here.
Jason, I have a question in terms of process. I was quite surprised. The recommendation, the committee recommends the legislative assembly to the provincial government. So does the legislative assembly deal with these motions individually?
I don't know the answer.
Okay. Does anybody know? Oh, okay, I'll look it up myself because I was just surprised that they would be so actually focused and constructive.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of, I mean, this is just the K-12. I mean, you're seeing recommendations 107 to 114. There's recommendations before this, and there's recommendations after this. We just cut the K-12 portion of this report out. There's a lot of recommendations in there.
Thank you. Questions, Trustee Spilsbury.
It's not a question, it's just a reminder to the board that we did answer their survey, and so our areas of interest were also considered in this report. So just make sure that everybody knows we were there too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I'll move on. The next item for information, I'm just going back to my shared agenda. Next item for information are some updates to admin procedure 300. So this is an administrative procedure that Associate Superintendent's Course became aware required some updating, some minor updating, and it has been updated around the identification that is required to demonstrate citizenship and residency within the province of British Columbia, just some minor changes, and administrative procedures don't go to the board for approval. They come to the board through BEBC for information updates. So I think the changes were really quite minor, so there's nothing I can really highlight other than to state that it has been updated.
Thank
For
you.
the times.
So we're ignoring the recommendation that's on the agenda page.
That's coming for the next one.
What says AP 300 eligibility for admission? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, sorry, there is an agenda, sorry. Yes, that does need to be, there's no motion required.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, my apologies, that shouldn't have been on there. The next one though. Climate Change Committee update to Policy 8, Board Standing Committees. So this policy came to the board through BEBC, I think two meetings ago, and there were a number of comments made. One, that it was wished that the committee's purpose was broader than just greenhouse gas reductions. So we have updated, I'll get it up here. We have updated that now to change the language to mitigate the environmental impact of the school district's operations from where it was before to reduce the board's impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So made it a little more broad. There were some comments around the duties, and we've now added promoting clean transportation options to that list as far as items that the Climate Change Standing Committee will consider. And I think the final one that we heard from the last two BEBCs ago was expansion of the committee. And so what we've added is language to state that invitations will be extended to the following groups, and listed those groups that we heard from the feedback at the last two BEBC meetings ago. So this has been updated and is now here for the committee to discuss or recommend to the board for inclusion into Policy 8. I'll just stop sharing so you can see hands for comments.
Any questions on Jason on those changes? Seeing none, there's a recommendation that we recommend the Board of Education and Business Committee recommends the board add the Climate Change Committee as presented to Policy 8 board committees. Trustee DeGroot, is there a seconder? Trustee Kimler, thank you. Any discussion on that? Trustee Croft.
Does the term community experts, does that give us some wiggle room to invite different organizations or the media and that kind of thing? Can we kind of put that all in underneath there?
Well, I think that was the intent, of keeping it pretty broad in terminology to give the discretion.
Okay, and then may I follow up, Mr. Chair?
You can.
And I guess the same thing under duties. Do we have some flexibility in there, like when it comes to land use and building methodologies? Oh, well, it looks on energy efficiency, so it is in there. Okay, that's good. Thank you. I answered my own question.
Trustee Dolman.
I have a question. So this committee will be making recommendations to the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
does the board have to accept those recommendations? Because there's a whole bunch of outside people there that are not responsible to the board.
I'll ask Trustee Spilsbury to answer that one, but the board doesn't have to accept any recommendations from even itself through this committee. That's the prerogative of the board. But I'm not quite sure about not being responsible. If they're assigned to a committee, they do have a responsibility to that committee and theoretically to the board, but perhaps Trustee Spilsbury can help me on that.
Well, I was just going to support your statement that the board has its own privilege to accept or reject any motion or any recommendations. I am picking up on a couple of things so that I have been thinking about, and that is one, under the duties, there isn't any flexibility around things like forest or tree planting to mitigate, for example. So there doesn't seem to be, or is there a way that if the committee finds a way to mitigate the climate change, that it can just be fit in there? That's my first question. And my second one is I'm just cautious about the number of people on this committee. Trustee Doman's already stated the trustees and district staff certainly may be a small number compared to the other members. And it just brings me back to 3 boards ago for me. And Trustee DeGroot can probably support my view around having 17 members on each committee and how much work that involved, and how much lack of board direction there was on those committees. So I'm wondering if we can make a change to one of the words. It says that all of the list of people will be invited. Could we put may be invited? That would allow some discretion on our behalf.
Is it appropriate for us to make changes at this time, Jason?
I think you would want, there's a motion on the floor, so I guess you would want an amendment to policy 8 of what is being, I think you need, sorry, I'm just going to read the existing motion. Yeah, you wouldn't be recommending it as presented, so it needs to be amended first. So
Okay.
I think you wanted to.
So the
keep
amendment
this and come back.
could be
Yeah.
to add a change to it.
Yeah.
And then we debate the amendment.
Yeah, so we need to amend it to include, change the word will to may.
Okay. I'm just wondering, Trustee Spilsbury, would it be better to limit the number on the committee to 10 or 9 or 11 or whatever we want, a functional number, so that by that nature you would, all the people could be invited, but there is a select group that are, I mean, a limited group that are actually appointed. Just a thought. Trustee Croft?
Didn't we run into the same thing on our anti-racism committee? And how did we manage that? Because we issued invitations, and we had media and groups and individuals. Does anyone recall what that policy, how did we manage it there?
One of the big differences, oh, pardon me.
Trustee Spilsbury?
One of the big differences between the two committees is this is a standing committee of the board, which makes it much more formal and long-term, where the other is an ad hoc committee. And we really haven't gone into any kind of recommendations to the board at all at this point, because the mandate is quite different.
Okay, so can we go back to Trustee Croft's, Trustee Spilsbury's first intention, which is change will or may to may? Is there
Yeah.
any other, sorry, Trustee Spilsbury?
I'm just favoring the way that you have suggested we unravel this, which is to limit the number on the committee rather than to appear to exclude any one of our educational partners or people in the community.
Okay, do you have a recommendation of the size? That the membership of the committee will be 10, which would include 3 trustees and 3 senior staff. So you're only looking for, unless the senior staff are not members but advisory to the committee.
That's correct.
Okay, so do you have a number then of the size of the committee you'd like to see?
Well, let me try the 10.
Okay.
So, and see if someone will second that idea.
Trustee Croft is seconding that. Any discussion on the size of the committee being set at 10? Trustee Doman?
That pretty much takes a committee out of the board's hands. And that, once again, going back to what Trustee Spilsbury said on a few boards ago, where you had all these giant committees with the board being a minority on these committees. So you have all these outside people making recommendations and the board having to follow them. I don't see that as a good idea.
Trustee Croft and Trustee DeGroot?
It just seems to me that there was some mention of having 3 trustees on the board and 3 senior staff. That to me counts up to 6 with 4 community members. I mean, if it really is just a numbers game, then that would put a pretty, the majority of people would be from the board or senior staff. And, you know, I just sort of listing it and doing it by numbers. I mean, I wonder if, and I'll just put this out for trustees to comment on, is if we said, you know, with community staff and community representation, and then put a maximum on it, because I think we still want to ensure that there are students on this, and we want to ensure there are community members on this. And if we just say, okay, we need 10, then the chair can have great fun just making it up exactly as she wants, right? He or she wants. So I'm just saying, what would you think if we went with representation from students, from the community, from staff, from the board, and experts to a maximum of 10 members?
Okay, I just want to clarify something. My understanding is the staff members are not voting members, they're advisory.
Okay, I take that back. But we still need them, right? They still need to be present.
They are, but this is the voting members and make a recommendation to the board. Yeah. Trustee DeGroot.
I think it's already been stated that whatever this committee brings forward, the board does not have to, the board as a whole does not have to accept. So, which is something that I know we had difficulty with before, but I think that if the 3 trustees on the board, on the committee, come to the board and they say, okay, we didn't vote for this, but the community did, then that would be, it would be a difficult situation, but the board legally does not have to accept it.
And I'd like to speak to it. I'm totally in favor of a 10. I had the opportunity to serve on the environmental committees of the CVRD, where the community input was deeply valued and appreciated, and the wisdom and experience paid dividends. So I don't think, I am not worried at all. The board makes the final decision on any recommendations coming forward by committees. And the more talent we have at the table, the better we will be. Trustee Croft and Trustee Doman.
Just in support of what you said, Trustee Hutchinson, that is that we also have a model of the advisory committee, which can't even make motions. And yet we do gather some really important input and just cross-pollination between the groups. So I'm just saying we've got a model for this working already. And the advisory group recognizes that we can't make motions. We don't necessarily take specific matters forward. And yet it's a very active and productive situation. So I think we'll be looking at the same thing come the Climate Action Committee.
Trustee Doman.
If this was more like an advisory committee, that would be different, but the way it's set up right now, I don't see it as that. And once again, if you start opening up a committee like that to outside people, you're going to lead yourself down to a rabbit hole where all your committees are going to have all kinds of outside influence, which once again, going back to previous boards, would not be good.
Trustee Jason, Mr. Sandquist.
I'm going back to the original draft from September. And in that draft, that would have seen 3 trustees as the only voting members. And we had language with resource personnel as needed, which would bring in students, local government, representatives, unions. We had it in brackets. So we had a structure where trustees would be the only voters, but others would come and provide feedback to the committee. And it sort of feels like we're in a bit of a hybrid between that and what I have here.
Trustee Sandquist, I'm sorry, Trustee Spilsbury, you had your hand up or not? Sorry.
I didn't really, but I'd like to speak, so I'll put it up.
Okay.
We have a motion on the table, and it is to have the 10 people. So I'd like to call a question.
Okay, so this is an amendment to the motion. So on the amendment, making it 10 as the size of the committee. All those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? Trustee Doman, do you want your vote recorded?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so on the main motion as amended, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, Trustee, sorry, Mr. Sandquist, any other business from you?
No, that concludes my portion of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Highlights from the advisory committee meeting. Trustee Croft.
Thank you so much. The advisory committee, of course, met last Tuesday, less than 24 hours after the floods. Superintendent Gray shared her appreciation for the partners for stepping up and providing a safe environment for our communities and our students and our families during a pretty crazy time. Mike Russell gave a presentation on the new Cowichan Secondary. We had to cancel our community presentation on the Monday night, and we had hoped to share that with the group. So it was a little different than what we thought, but we had a nice overview, not only of the design, but of all the cultural and educational theory and culture of care, diversity, and all the very careful human consideration that goes into making a building. And it respected our values, it respected First Nations history, and it was very well received. Our partners told us that keep the information coming. They really want to stay up to date on all of our progress and all of the related matters to the building and all that excitement. Our district principal of Indigenous education, Charlie Coleman, gave a presentation with guidance on being a cultural ally. Presentation was prepared by both Charlie and Larry Matten, who is our director of instruction. Some of these highlights include being a really good listener, to apologize and start again if you have to let go of some assumptions and be open to new ideas and very new ways of experiencing the world. Courageous conversations are encouraged. Find the courage to stand up and to say something if you notice inappropriate behavior in others. And again, lots of good conversation around those ideas as presented. Secretary Treasurer Jason Sandquist reported on the school population predictions, which draws on both broad and local demographic trends, looking into economic growth. That data will continue to inform a great many decisions, especially important for facilities planning in the future. Trustee Joanne Kemmler is now taking the helm, will be the chair of the advisory committee. I'm moving on to the Climate Action Committee. Excuse me. So yeah, so you'll be getting your reports from Joanne from this day forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Kopp. Seeing no other business, just a reminder that we're looking for some ugly weather coming in on Thursday and Saturday, I think. So stay safe and drive hardly at all. Have a wonderful week, you guys. Oh, motion to adjourn. Sorry. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Croft. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Bye-bye.